Thank you for joining us for another in the Heart NSTA Trust lecture series, The Heartbeat. We're happy to have you. I'm your host, Kevin Baxter. In today's presentation, we highlight the need for the tools in the automotive service and repairs and how this affects service delivery. This session will help learners to 1. Identify the equipment used in the automotive field. 2. Understand the safety precautions while using automotive tools and equipment. Here's Clifton Henry with the lesson.
Thank you, Kevin. Today we're going to be looking at basic hand tools as it relates to the motor vehicle industry. So we have with us today a number of hand tools that are used when the vehicle is being repaired, when the vehicle is being serviced, when basic maintenance is being done. We need to have appropriate hand tools. And so what we'll be looking at are some of the tools that are used within the automotive industry. We're going to be starting off by looking at sockets. Now here we have a socket set. This is a basic socket set that carries a number of tools in it. Sockets, an extension, and we have here a 12-inch extension or 30-millimeter extension, a 15-millimeter or 6-inch extension, a swivel or universal joint, and a ratchet handle. Now, some socket sets come with more than just these parts. Some also carries speed handles, some carry T-bars and what we call power bars or breaker bars. These are used specifically when you need extra torque in order to pull bolts and nuts. So that's a socket set, and it is essential to be used within the automotive industry. Now, another set of tools that we use within the automotive industry are spanners, or as it is sometimes called, wrenches. Now, here we have some samples of wrenches. We have, firstly, open wrench. Now, both ends carry an open, and therefore it is called an open wrench or an open spanner. Now, this is just one design, and for most of these, they are graduated in metric measurements. But you also have tools that come in inches. However, in Jamaica, and within the Caribbean, we tend to use the SI system, and therefore we use the metric tools mainly. We also have another type of spanner. This one is called a combination spanner. It carries an open end. It also carries a closed end, what we call a box end or ring. Now, this design allows you to work within more secure conditions in that the ring end of the spanner prevent you from damaging the tool itself or the component that you're pulling, the bolt or the nut. So it is more secured. It is preferred to be used than an open wrench spanner. We have here a ring spanner, or what we would call a box spanner. Both ends are ring or boxed. And this one is also very secure. It is preferred to be used to the open end. We tend to use the open end only when the ring is unable to fit properly. Otherwise, you might end up damaging your tool. We also have other tools that we use within the automotive industry outside of the spanners and the sockets as basic tools. We use pliers. Now, this is one type of pliers. There are many types of pliers that are used within the automotive industry. This one is called a round nose pliers. You have another type here, which is used for circlips. Those round semicircular rings that can be expanded outward or expanded inward, and they are used to lock shafts and bushings in place. So the circlip pliers is used to pull the circlip in order that you're able to remove a shaft or a bushing as needed. We also have another type of grip or pliers. This particular one is called a vice grip, because when you put your component inside there, you hold it and there's a lock that holds it in place. It is clamped firmly in place so that the component cannot be shifted easily. It can be used along with a drill or a drill press in order to hold the component firmly. Just that, in the case of a drill press, you have to be very careful because of the torque that is generated by a drill press might be more than the tool is able to hold, in which case a dex clamp or a bench vise may be used or may be needed in such a situation. There are other pliers, such as a cutting pliers here. Now this one is used to strip wires, the insulator from wires, in order that you can get to the conductors. There are different types, and this is just one. So these are just samples of pliers that are used within the automotive industry. I want to also show you some additional tools, basic tools, such as a screwdriver. Now this is one type. This is called a standard or flat end screwdriver. And the end, as you can see, is flat, and therefore it allows you to be able to fit into a screw that carries a flat end and pull or tighten the screw effectively. Now this is a large one. They come in short sizes, and they come in very fine points as well. So you have the stubby, which is a short one, and the fine point one can be called a terminal screwdriver. Depending on the use, we change them. There's also another type of screwdriver, this type, which is used within the automotive industry. And this end, as you can see here, has a cross. Therefore, it is called a Phillips or cross-end screwdriver. Now, the Phillips screwdriver can be fitted into a screw that carries a cross at the head, or it is, well, it's normally a cross that is there, and so it is fitted in it, used to pull and tighten again. There's another type that is very similar to the Phillips, but the main one that we see within the automotive industry is the Phillips or cross-end screwdriver. We also have another type of screwdriver. This one is called a Torx. Now, it is not a very common one that most people is familiar with. However, it is used within the automotive industry, and there are variants of it. However, this particular design, while it doesn't have a hole in the center as some do, this particular design allows you to be able to fit into a screw head that carries more than 3 or 4 crosses, as in the case of the Phillips screwdriver. So this one carries about 6 or 8 in some cases. It fits inside there and allows it to turn. Now, when the bolt needs greater grip, this one will allow it, although you find that most Torx screws tend to be smaller than those that are used for the Phillips or the flat end. Another type of screw that is found on the motor vehicle is the Allen design. Now this one is hexagon in shape, and this is the design that we have with us today. Now, as you can see at the end there, it carries a hexagon. Some of them, of course, comes with the handle, similar to this. So it is called at that time a Allen handle. However, this one is called an Allen key. And it basically allows you to be able to pull and tighten bolts and screws that carry the appropriate designed head. So these are just some of the screwdrivers that we use. Here's another Torx. This one is big, but this one is a key, unlike this one, which is a handle. So those are some of the hand tools that you find within the automotive industry. Of course, you also have hammers, which are needed. It is an essential component within the automotive industry because you have to apply force from time to time. Therefore, the hammer is one such design that is employed within the automotive industry. It is used to shock components in order to loosen or tighten, as the case may be, to facilitate pulling and tightening. And also, of course, for fitting. So the hammer is used, this particular design is called a ball peen hammer. So the design of the head, if you observe carefully, is round, so it allows you to actually build rivets and other components. So it's specifically designed for this purpose. You have other hammers that are used within the automotive industry, such as those that carry a wedge at the end, or a small wedge in some cases for the purpose of chipping or for scraping. But in the majority of cases within the automotive industry, we tend to use a ball peen hammer, as you see here. We have other components, such as punches. Now, punches are used within the automotive industry in order to provide indentation, to provide drifting of a shaft, in order that you can get movement in small spaces. So you drift or you indent in order that you can get a mark for the purpose of marking out, for measurement, etc. This particular tool, however, carries a hole in the center, and it allows you to be able to actually cut from a piece of material, whether it be from velomite, which can be used to make gaskets, from cork, which is used to make gaskets, or even thin aluminum, which can also be used to make gaskets. But it is designed to cut holes, and therefore this particular tool is called a gasket cutter, as you can see here. So we have many hand tools that we use within the automotive industry, and these are just some of them. Now, when the motor vehicle engine is being disassembled, you also not only need to use these tools to disassemble and reassemble, but you also need tools in order to do measurements. For example, you have disassembled the engine cylinder head from the cylinder block. You now need to do some measurements. A tool like this is used to actually measure the cylinder head or the cylinder block to see if they are warped, to see if there is any clearance in the head that can cause air or fluid to flow past it. If that should happen, then it would cause the engine not to function properly. So to ensure that you have a properly functioning engine, we use a component like which is called a straight edge. Now the straight edge is used along with a feeler gauge, and this is a feeler gauge. The feeler gauge is used to measure small distances. A spark plug, for example, carries 2 electrodes, a side electrode, a center electrode, and between them there should be a specific gap. The gap that should be between the electrodes is determined by the manufacturer. However, when you buy the spark plug, you need to ensure that the appropriate gap is there. Therefore, you need a tool to do that, such as a feeler gauge. And so you have the blades, and each blade comes with a specific size. It is written on it, so you look for the specific size that you want, and you measure the clearance between both electrodes. In the case of the engine and the straight edge, we would take the straight edge, put it flat against the surface, put a light on one side, and you look along the surface to see if there are any clearance. If where you see light coming through, you want to measure that clearance now to see if it is above the specification or below the specification. And you use the feeler gauge to put along this space in order to measure that gap. Once it is below the specification, then your head or your block is good to go. If, however, it is above the specification, then you need to get it sorted at one of those institutions that skim head or block, such as an engineering place. So those are some of the basic hand tools that we use. So these two, as you say, are measuring tools. Now there are other measuring tools that we use within the automotive industry. This is another. This particular tool is called a Verna Caliper. You have calipers that look like a compass, but this particular design, this particular tool is called a Verna Caliper. What it does, it allows you to do specific measurements between both heads right here, between both blades. So you can actually measure the thickness or width of this tool. You can measure it. It is very, very precise. It can give you up to 2/25 of a millimeter or 1/1000 of an inch in measurement. And so it is very precise, and it is an excellent tool to use when you want to do measurements within the automotive industry. It comes both, as you can see here, manual, and you can also do digital readings. We have also another tool that is used within the automotive industry for the purpose of measurement. And this particular tool is called a micrometer. I'm sure you're familiar with it because the term is used regularly. So this micrometer is used to measure between these two surfaces. And again, it will measure the clearance between there. It can be used to measure ovality, taper, even as the Verna Caliper is used to measure ovality and taper as well. As long as you know specifically how to measure them, similarly, the micrometer can be used to measure ovality and taper of bearings, of journals, and so on, of shafts, and things like those. So the micrometer is a very effective measuring tool within the automotive industry. Another measuring tool is the dial gauge. Now this dial gauge, as you can see, is very important. It carries a stand. The dial gauge is here. It is forced against a surface in order to preload it. You zero it, and then you rotate, whether it be a shaft, a bearing, whatever it is that you're measuring, and you observe the difference, the movements that take place. And then that tells you whether the surface is straight, whether it is flat, whether it is circular, whether the circle is concentric, and how much it is out by as needed. So a dial gauge is an essential tool that we use within the automotive industry. When we go to the differential, and most people do not know what a differential is on the motor vehicle, but you have the engine, you have the gearbox, you have the differential. The differential carries inside it what we call a round, a very heavy round piece of metal that with teeth, and that particular component is meshed with another component that is called a pinion. So the pinion has teeth that meshes with the crown wheel. And what happens is that there sometimes are gaps or clearance between the crown wheel teeth and the pinion teeth. And so the dial gauge can actually measure that clearance. That clearance is called backlash. If too much backlash is inside your differential, when the vehicle is driving, especially for larger vehicles, you hear a slamming sound when you're moving off. You're going forward or you're reversing. And that is an indication that you have excess play and it needs to be taken care of. Either it needs to be adjusted or you need to change your differential because it is worn. And so the dial gauge is an essential tool for that purpose. Now, among the other tools that we have here for the purpose of measurement, I want to introduce to you another tool. This particular tool is used to measure pressure, air pressure inside the engine itself. So what we would do for most persons who have a car that uses gasoline, we remove the spark plug, screw the end into the space where the spark plug is fitted. The engine is cranked a number of times, and the pressure is measured. The pressure that builds up inside the cylinder is measured. Now what we do is that we measure all the cylinders in order to see if they meet the requirement as set out by the manufacturer. Once the pressure within the engine cylinder is okay, or it meets the minimum requirement, fine. If it is below, it means that the engine needs to be repaired. The cylinder might be worn, the rings might be worn, or the valves themselves might be leaking and causing problem. And so a compression gauge is essential when you're repairing your engine. It is good if you're going to be doing diagnosis on the vehicle before you disassemble. You need to do compression tests. The engine is driving, you'd find that it is not pulling as it should. So it lacks power. What's the problem? One way to find out if it's a mechanical problem, your compression gauge. The motor vehicle battery. Now, of course, modern motor vehicles have gone beyond the fossil fuel engine. That's a regular engine that uses gas or diesel fuel. And we have gone now into hybrid, which is a combination of electric along with the fossil fuel engine. However, all use a battery, and most of the vehicles that we have in Jamaica today still use the lead acid battery. Now, the lead acid battery uses lead plates inside it, along with, of course, an acid, which is called sulfuric acid. So it is diluted, and this is referred to as the electrolyte within the battery. The electrolyte facilitates the flow of electrons between the plates, and therefore gives us electricity. Now, in order to ensure that our battery is functioning properly, most manufacturers would sell the vehicle and tell us that we have 2 years as a warranty. However, the battery can last longer than that if we take care of it properly. And so this tool, which is called a hydrometer, can be used to measure the specific gravity of the battery. What we do is that we take up some of the electrolyte, that's the liquid inside the battery, into the tool here, and it gives an indication of how dense the fluid is. It gives what they call a specific gravity of the electrolyte, and it tells us whether it is high, low, or midpoint. If it is low, it means that the battery is being discharged, and either it needs to be recharged, and if the battery is being discharged unnecessarily, it could be because your alternator is not functioning properly, or the battery cells are going. But this is a tool that can be used to do proper check on it to verify the state of your battery. We have another tool that can do that very well as well, and we call that tool Midtronic. And it's this tool right here. It's an electronic tool. You simply clip these two alligator clips to the battery, negative and the positive. And we turn it on, and it automatically does all the tests. It checks your alternator, it checks the battery to make sure that the charging system is functioning properly and your battery is functioning properly. And it gives you the appropriate information about whether or not these are working and what state they're in. So this particular tool is a very good tool for that purpose. It's called a battery starting charging system analyzer. So it analyzes these three systems on the vehicle: the battery, the starting system, the charging system. And the battery is a part of your charging system. Well, it's a part of the whole electrical system on the vehicle, which includes starting and charging. I have two more pieces of equipment here. This piece of equipment, I know what it looks like, but with this long snout here like an anteater, some people might wonder, what is that? What is it used for? It's actually an electronic tool that is used to check to see if your AC, now I'm sure everybody knows what AC is, right? And in this case, it is not alternating current, as in most cases. Instead, it is for air conditioning. And so it checks to see if the refrigerant within the air conditioning system is leaking. So you point the snout right here along the air conditioning system from any point on the system along the lines, whether it be the high pressure line, the low pressure line, the compressor. You check your various other components on it just to verify if there's a leak, because sometimes your AC system aren't working properly. It could be that the vehicle is not cooling properly. It could be that it cools and stops. There are issues. You need to check to see if the refrigerant is leaking, and so this is one way to check the system. Good. The other component is a diagnostic tool, which is used to do diagnostics on the vehicle. It measures, it checks the vehicle electronic systems, such as the sensors, such as the actuators, to see if these are functioning properly. So we connect it to the diagnostic sticker or the diagnostic plug on the vehicle, what we call OBD2, second generation onboard diagnostic, and it is turned on and it diagnoses the state of these components. Whichever sensors are on the vehicle, electronic sensors, it can be used to check each of them individually. Similarly, electronic actuators, it can be used to check each of them individually to determine their status. And of course, the diagnostic tool comes in much smaller size, and they are also bigger size depending on the design and who builds them. Of course, not all of them can be used for all vehicles. Some can be used only for Japanese vehicles. Some are used for Japanese and Asian. Some are used for European vehicles. Some are used for European and American vehicles. So they vary. What we should try to do is get one that are best suited for our condition. Since we are in Jamaica, we tend to have a lot of Japanese and Asian vehicles. And therefore, if you're just starting out, you could get a tool like that for that purpose, for the vehicles that you work with most, and then gradually build on it as needed. Some tools will allow you to actually upgrade them. And if you're able to upgrade them, you may be able to upgrade them with additional information outside of just Asian or European. So once the information is available and the tool allows you to upgrade it, then go ahead and do so. All right. So those are all the tools that we have here. I want to lastly now speak to you as it relates to what all these tools are used for. The hand tools are used specifically with your hand. So you would use it in art. So it basically requires manual or mechanical labor, manipulative work. So you must be able to use your hands very well. And within the automotive industry, it is very important that we are able to use our hands. Now, not everyone is very good with their hands in terms of doing manipulative work. Some persons find that it is easier for them to allow someone else to do the work mechanically for them or manually while they do the head work or they will do the leg work. However, some of us use our hands, and so a tool like this, adjustable wrench, we can use very easily with our hands. So we have the hand tools for that. Then, of course, you have your equipment, such as a multimeter, such as the gauges that I had shown you earlier on. These are used along with power, whether it be electrical power, pneumatic, which is air, or hydraulic power. So you find that equipment comes so they're empowered. They're powered by other sources than just the mechanical, just by the hand. Such as I mentioned, your multimeter. It actually uses battery inside there, so it's an electrical tool. There are other electrical tools that are used, and I mentioned earlier on, for example, your air conditioning detector. That uses electrical energy as well, and there are others. The scan tool, it is plugged in and connected to your battery. So what you find is that many of the equipment that are used for diagnostic purposes, that are used for testing and measuring, uses either electricity, uses air, or uses hydraulics, fluid, in order to empower them to do the necessary tests and measurements that are required. So those are some of the equipment that we use within the automotive industry, and these are also some of the hand tools that we use within the automotive industry. Thank you for your time.
We want to hear from you. So log on to our social media pages or WhatsApp on 876-279-7930. You can also check out our YouTube channel to review all the information from the session. I'm Kevin Baxter. See you again on The Heartbeat.